Day three of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago wrapped up with Tim Walz taking to the stage, Kamala Harris's vice presidential nominee using his address to introduce himself to the American public. The governor of Minnesota previously served in the National Guard before becoming a school teacher, and before he formally accepted the nomination, he reflected on what inspired him to run for office.
For me, it was serving in the Army National Guard. I joined up 2 days after my 17th birthday, and I proudly wore our nation's uniform for 24 years. But it was those players and my students who inspired me to run for Congress. They saw in me what I had hoped to instill in them, a commitment to the common good, an understanding that we're all in this together.
Now, Tim Walz there presenting himself as a relatable dad and a high school teacher from the Midwest. But among environmentalists, he's also gained a reputation as a pragmatic climate advocate. To talk more about this, I'm joined on set by our environmental editor, Valerie Dekimpe. Valerie, great to see you. Now, is Tim Walz America's new climate darling?
Well, behind this persona of the average American dad, you actually have someone who has championed one of the most ambitious climate agendas in the country as the governor of Minnesota. Minnesota is sort of like the new California in terms of leading forward with progressive climate policies. The state has made a remarkable shift away from coal. Carbon-free sources of power, wind, solar, nuclear, now account for 50% of the state's power generation. And Walz has been credited with really pushing, signing one of the strongest green energy bills, requiring the state to essentially eliminate carbon from electricity production by 2040. He has also passed reforms designed to push for more renewable energy. And as a result, the state has been able to pull a lot of money from Biden's Inflation Reduction Act, the country's biggest investment in climate. And what's interesting is not just the fact that he has, really championed climate policies, but also the fact how he actually has implemented those policies. And so commentators have praised Walz for really working hand in hand with the people who might be affected negatively by his policies and making sure that they're not going to create problems on the ground and actually making those policies more popular. And so he really has been praised for his ability to tie, climate policies with jobs, with economic development. And so commentators even talk about the Minnesota model. And so I think having someone who can make climate policies more palatable, that can be a great asset for Kamala Harris.
I didn't know how liberal Minnesota was until Tim Walz appeared onto the scene.
Yeah.
I know that the Democrats have just had a month to get their act together because they had to change the top of the ticket with putting Kamala Harris in place of Joe Biden. But it seems that climate issues haven't really been at the heart of the Democratic campaign so far. Is it intentional?
Yeah, I mean, climate issues for sure have been quite absent from this campaign. Looking at high-level speeches that we've heard from the last couple of days at the convention, I only found records of Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama actually mentioning climate change in their speeches, and more importantly, Kamala Harris, has remained relatively silent on climate issues since her campaign began. She has yet to unveil the details to voters of what her climate and energy positions are. And that could be quite surprising considering that Biden made, climate change, climate issues, put them at the heart of his campaign. Democrats have ample room to brag about the Inflation Reduction Act, but they have decided not to. And Harris and Walz have, embraced a more pragmatic agenda, talking a lot about, minimum wage increase, child care funding. The priority now perhaps being reaching out to moderate voters or disaffected Republicans and coming out really strong on reining in fossil fuels, promoting electric vehicles. That potentially could, push voters away, especially in swing states like Pennsylvania. There's also the argument that Harris already has the backing of people who care about climate change, so they don't need to core them specifically. But for younger voters, Gen Z in particular, who were not that excited about Joe Biden's campaign, who are a bit more energized now with Harris, and who we know are deeply engaged with climate change issues, Harris will have to show a bit more passion, when talking about climate change issues. So we'll have to see if she does mention it tonight in her speech.
Exactly.